Right. Welcome to, well, Kaiserreich, the beta .26, which, as far as I can remember, happens to be the longest lived original patch. Because usually there's a patch a couple days later to fix some issues that manage to creep in. Maybe a couple other patches, but for some reason this thing has been here for about a month. So, I mean, there is only one new country, so I guess that makes sense. And we'll be playing it. Unusually, they don't actually start on the map. They'll come up later. At the moment, they're acting as an insurgency that doesn't actually appear on the map. Yeah, so the Mingan insurgency. In the late winter of 1927, the Chinese National Party, Kuomintang, National Revolution was on the brink of collapse following a series of major military defeats and the death of the expedition's commander, Chiang Kai-shek. Bear in mind, I'm probably going to mispronounce quite a few things, but I'll try my best. With the destruction of the Kuomintang's National Revolutionary Army, General Li Jishen convinced a part of the NRA to continue the revolution by waging a protracted war of resistance against the Zili warlords and their German lackeys. The Zili warlords are particularly what is called the Qing government, as well as the League of Eight Provinces, specifically the ones that are Zili clique, the northern and southern Zili cliques, or another name for them, but officially they're the Qing government and the League of Eight Provinces. Right, back to this. He was joined by Song Qingling and later Deng Yanda, and after the failure of their 1932 Shanghai uprising, they decided to flee to the remote mountainous villages and forests of southeastern Jiangxi and northwestern Fujian, hoping to one day strike back. Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Kuomintang, dominated by the party's left wing, fled for Europe, hoping to organize a government of exile to perhaps one day liberate China. Here in the remote rural backwater of southern China, Song Qingling's populist-based government has created a unique movement shrouded in secrecy, one with ties to cells and allied towns in the region. Peasants, both men and women, are trained and taught by NRA officers, hoping to inspire a new generation of revolutionaries, capable of fulfilling the mission of national salvation. They are taught that there shall be no class and chains in the Kuomintang's free China. They are further aided by a vast network of spies, informants, party cells, and fellow leftists in the Shanghai neutral zone, with rumors of even criminal organizations playing a role in arms smuggling and supplies. In 1932, Chinese syndicalists, socialists, and members of the Kuomintang staged mass strikes across the eastern seaboard of China, hoping to cripple the despicable League of Eight Provinces. But brutally repressed, it has given hope and faith to those in China. Perhaps the KMT shall return once more. Despite their primarily proclaimed unity, as the true heirs of Dr. Sun Yat-sen's revolution, the leftist-dominated KMT is an increasingly factional party. Years of distance and personal distrust between the party members has led to the creation of two significant factions within the party. Making up the dominated faction within the Central Committee, the Reorganized Comrades Association represents a coalition of both radical and moderate socialists who fled for Europe with Chairman Wang Jingwei. Originally a secret organization with cells in the Chinese-European expatriate community, as well as legation cities, the RCA takes its name from the reorganization of the party in 1924, when the KMT took inspiration from the post-Great War socialist revolutions. As such, they believe that the party must be purified and reorganized to create a new revolutionary NRA made up of the peasants and workers, and that the Kuomintang will indeed be a vanguard in a forthcoming materialist class struggle. To do so, the RCA believes that the revolution must be furnished from above. An educated and patriotic cadre must lead the masses to revolutionary triumph. The second largest faction within the leftist-dominated KMT are those who fled with Song Qingling Song Qingling, to the Mingan insurgent zone, declaring themselves as a provisional action committee, citing that the greatest solution to China's woes would be to administer direct action as soon as possible. The PAC believes that a revolution must instead start from the bottom up, and that exceptional individuals such as General Deng Yanda are to help the masses achieve revolutionary consciousness. However, this puts them at odds with the European returnees. Excluding the two major cliques of the leftist-dominated KMT, the left's claim to political legitimacy as a true KMT has nonetheless led to include a variety of minor factions and organizations within the shared umbrella of a nationalist revolution. Within the Chinese exiles in Europe, a small faction of disgruntled Whampoa military academy officers found themselves inspired by the growing radical movements of Europe, those of Savinkov's NRPR, the French Sorelian movement, and Oswald Mosley's Maximus movement in the Union of Britain. Since popularized among elements of the European far left, totalism has achieved a small but certainly growing following amongst young radical military officers, who believe that democracy has no place in a China free of imperialism. Not all members of the KMT chose exile in Europe and China. A noticeable number of centrists and other like-minded liberals fled for Southeast Asia or the United States, especially in Hawaii. The nominal head of this overseas Chinese committee is Sun Fo, the son of the party's founder. Still, nonetheless, it is reported that the OCC also has support with NRA officers who were sent to the Buryatia commune for political and military training. As part of its United Front policies in exchange for receiving aid and recognition by the Third Internationale, the KMT is also compelled to work with other socialist groups in China that are not affiliated with them. These disparate unions, parties, and organizations are loosely united under the League of Chinese Syndicalists and involve council communists, anarcho-syndicalists, other anarchists, and other socialists. Most dominant among them is the Chinese Syndicalist Party. And that's it for the introduction. We don't need this stuff active. Oh, and I probably should turn on the music. I normally play with the Kaiserreich music mod, but tends to be issues with that. Start with this focus, and it'll complete once the thing activates. Let's get started on research. I'm gonna need equipment. But I should not ignore research speed. I don't need legitimacy. I technically am a government in exile, but I don't have mechanics involved. I don't have the DLC for it, I don't think. The year of the Ret. A new year comes to China, long overdue for a change. It's been 4 years since the unsuccessful Shanghai uprising across the eastern seaboard, and almost a decade since the collapse of the northern expedition. But like the Zodiac, the same cycles of poverty and exploitation continue on. And like rats, KMT insurgents remain underground and hiding, festering in their squalor. But they continue to survive nonetheless. The repeated encirclement campaigns, waged by the League of Eight Provinces and their German advisors, have come to nil, despite their material superiority, because of their endemic corruption, crafty insurgent leaders, and the sheer tenacity of the guerrillas. Although unable to stop the League from controlling major population centers, they have hampered League efforts to control the hinterland. Still, as the new year approaches, January 24th in the traditional Chinese calendar, the Mingan insurgency have little else to retreat to. For all the failures of the encirclement campaigns, they have largely isolated meaningful rebellion to the Fujian-Jiangxi region, far from the centers of power. Socialist cells often remain divided, and even in the heart of Mingan, the people's government is often illusory. Its leaders know full well that there would be no insurgency if it was not for the sacrifices of the people, who often support great and small, who often offer support great and small that allow the Mingan to trudge onwards. The nexus point is socialist resistance. Mingan is a hub with spokes extending far deep into China. Sometimes brain and mouth and eyes don't quite connect properly. Connecting them with various networks stretching into sympathetic cities such as Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Xiamen. Where is that last one? Anyway, but supply shipments have grown more difficult over the years thanks to improved leak patrols and legation crackdowns. As they plan their next operation to smuggle equipment, Wing Khan turns to... I can pick between totalist social liberalism and syndicalism. Let's go with the urban syndicalist house in Xiamen. For all the sins of the imperialists and concessionists, sloth is not one of them. Exploiting cheap Chinese labor, and a token Chinese representation among the engineers, the Aufsichtsrat der Ostasiatischen Generalverwaltung, AOG, have built a large railway extending from Shanghai to Nanchang. The AOG is an extension of German concessionism, an arm for corporate conglomerates hoping to exploit Chinese resources. Their move to Jiangxi, the heart of Mingan, paying numerous bribes and braving our best efforts to stop them, has been a source of despair as they brushed aside sabotage and corruption alike. But in many ways, perhaps the same determined avarice as the capitalist's downfall. Betraying their local partners and any promises of a more egalitarian future, scandal broke out when the AOG suddenly announced their decision to consolidate their controlling shares in various Chinese railways into one on behalf of the Shantung Eisenbahngesellschaft, an AOG subsidiary. This move to entrench German dominance and force Chinese managers to answer to a German board has backfired, with widespread anger boiling over across the League. The Zigan Railway, once a much advertised sign of progress, has now become a symbol of the continued humiliation of the Chinese people. It seems the Germans have forgotten their history. It was not long ago that a similar rail dispute in China set forth the fall of an empire. Again, probably should do the bottom one. Capitalism must be driven out of our nation once and for all. I'd rather avoid totalism popularity when possible. The Brewing Tempest. The KMT, once on the back foot amidst the League's advances, has seen new life breathed into its lungs. The much vaunted Zigan Railway project has awoken decades of pent-up anger among the long-suffering Chinese people, with waves of condemnation coming from concerned intellectuals, socialist factory pamphlets, and nationalist publications of all stripes. It seems the scandal has struck a deep nerve across a broad section of Chinese society. The spark of resistance has spread like wildfire. In cities, both in the League and elsewhere, there have been widespread protests and boycotts against the AOG. Railroads have been attacked and sabotaged, and League authorities, themselves said to be fuming over the Germans' betrayal, have been slow to stop them. Various officials and foreign citizens, said to be tied to the Zigan, have been attacked by mobs and some assassinated in the anti-concessionist frenzy. While the KMT and other socialist insurgents can claim credit for some of them, they are not even close to a majority. It seems this outpouring of public anger stemmed from a genuine grassroots popular anger, one that the party is eager to take part in, even if doubts remain among the leadership if it will amount to much. The party's deployment of its agents are expected to be most influential in the southern parts of the League, where their hold remains strong, if waning. As violence flares, hope is renewed in Mingan. Oh yeah, Xiamen is here. Okay. Turn off Fog of War, I don't like to live in. The Wuhu Massacre. 200 dead, 800 wounded. Not that much for China. The news came quickly into Nanchang and Xiamen. disseminating across Fujian and Jiangxi before League authorities could even try to censor it. As striking workers amassed in German factories in Anhui province, the demonstrations were joined by a growing number of protesters that flooded the streets. The police, reinforced by German-trained soldiers, fired upon the crowd. The numbers seemed to multiply every time the stories were told from person to person, and tales of German advisors deliberately ordering the shootings have spread as well. The end result has been the same, with protests growing in size and numbers, and the crisis showing little signs of abating. What began as a protest against German economic overreach has exploded into broader calls for social change, ranging from the abolition of the monarchy to the elimination of concessionism, to the overthrow of warlords, to the unification of the country, and to the end of capitalism. Many of the protesters shout to no one in particular, venting their frustrations even though they hold little hope much will be done in a stagnant, divided China. But for the KMT, the moment is nigh. A powder keg has been set off, and not simply one of anti-concessionism. A propaganda offensive has already gone underway, casting them as heroes in China's hour of need. But there are many promises in the air, and the KMT are hardly the only ones making them. I think I'll go for the stability buff. Even if it gets me totalism popularity. I'm gonna swap to just regional events. Oh, and VP names, because why not? I don't need all, Afghanistan. I don't need it, at least at the moment. Right, capitalist economies collapse. I think... Yeah, this is just a generic event for all socialist countries. You'll still go to in the League War, right? I hope so. There we go, a flavor event. That's actually unique. A whole other world away, the fallout of Germany's economic collapse, already nicknamed Black Monday, has quickly reached China due to extensive German economic presence. Stockbrokers and traders watched with horror, as the Shanghai Stock Exchange began closing at record numbers unseen since Shanghai was shaken by the financial tumult of 1925, and local institutions are doing what they can to mitigate the damage. To many KMT leaders in Paris, especially figures such as Chen Gongbo and Xi Kuntong, the financial chaos of Black Monday is exactly as Marx predicted, the beginning of possibly a new order, one free from the insatiable greed of capitalism. Yeah, right. This has happened before, it will happen again. KMT and LCS cells buzz with activity, mobilizing sympathetic unions and other workers' organizations in major cities. The League of 8 Provinces authority is rapidly eroding, as exemplified by King's break from Nanjing. A recent naval mutiny in Fujian has likewise spurred interest in Paris, and Wang Jingwei has ordered the buildup of resources in India. Hidden away in the hills and forests of the Mingan insurgent zone, Song Qingling and her government have amassed considerable independence from the Central Committee in Paris. Communication between the two KMT governments is limited, and most of the day-to-day operations of the insurgency are led by Song's lieutenants. Among her most trusted military commanders are Generals Li Jixin and Deng Yanda, who believe that the nightmare of Zili authority over eastern China is finally at an end. Arguing that the time is ripe, Deng has advocated for a quick offensive, positioning well-prepared and trusted militia columns for a surgical strike to be carried with minimal delay. Li Jixin and others, however, have advocated taking some time to coordinate with groups more loyal to Paris, as well as rally previously disillusioned or sleeper cells. Time is of the essence, though. The most opportune window is unclear. Take the time to consolidate forces. I don't think I really need command power. Extra royal support is also appreciated. It'll get me more command power in the long run. There's nothing perhaps more dutiful and patriotic than Shi Jinghui's act of filial piety in avenging the death of her father Shi Kongbin. Disguised as a serving woman, the young Shi Jiankui shot the despicable warlord from behind with 3 bullets from a Browning pistol. Yep. Sounds like he went into a coma. While her fate after being arrested by Sun's bodyguards is unknown, the League's former leader now lies in a coma. Yeah, okay, that event. And it is clear that the fragile unity of the League is finally coming undone. Urgent messages have flown from the Minggan insurgency to Shanghai and then to Paris. A final uprising is underway. With communications delayed, there is little time to wait for a response. Discussions are underway on whether or not to commit every man to the front lines in the forthcoming battle, or to keep some in reserve. Though the guerrillas have proved effective in disrupting League control in Mingan, they have not always been particularly effective in the field, especially in pitched conventional battles. Planners have argued that leaving some as flying columns will allow for logistical flexibility and reinforcements as the campaign unfolds. Others warn, however, that this campaign is do or die, and this will likely be the last chance for socialism to organically take root. Holding back some units will encourage all the spirit cells to hold back for an imaginary fallback position, one that will hardly exist should this operation fail. This fateful choice may very well decide if Dr. Sun's vision can finally be realized. All hands? Or a mobile reserve? Mobile reserve. Hmm. And the League War has begun. The focus tree will change. Right, I'll take any and all help I can get. Don't have the ability to do that. Appeal for international support. Right, it's important to first get access to the sea. Sadly, the League has troops here, so I'm going to need to deal with that quickly. Let's capture supplies here. I'm going to need my morale for the moment in order to have high breakthrough. However, League morale should start, yeah. Well, they're no longer called the League, they're now called the Nanjing Clique. But the morale should start low. Ah, you're gonna just let me walk in? Thank you. I have to become independent from the League. Oh. Yeah. turn the second NRA. Okay, so I've captured quite a bit of territory, so I can afford to do that. Good, I completed all the initial objectives quickly. I don't need intel. Not yet. Just one. A long-held aspiration of the World Society was the creation of an institute. Aren't you going to extend the... There we go. Institute modeled around one established in 1902 in Charleroi, Belgium. This university would be one for the workers, helping to mend class divisions by combining labor and education to allow the creation of the laboring intellectual. Fittingly, their slogan is to turn schools into factories and fields and factories into schools. A high-minded aspiration meant to lay the groundwork for a peaceful future transition to an anarchist state. Cai Yuanpai, a leading Chinese educator and one of the 4 elders that make up the World Society, heads the preparatory committee for this university. With the help of their protege, Yu Peiji, an educator now appointed as president of the university, they aspire to turn the National Labor University into a continuation of the old frugal work study program in France that generates so many idealists now in the party. The institution is besieged by problems, though none unsurmountable. Funding has been generously provided recently by the government, and there does seem to be a genuine eagerness, even by rivals within the party, for more universities accessible to the poor farmers and laborers who otherwise would not be able to afford an education. Still, their ambition to teach an anarchist interpretation of the 3 principles have raised eyebrows. In response, they cite examples of Dr. Sun's lectures that praise Proudhon and Bakunin over the Marxists. It remains to be seen whether or not such beliefs will ever take hold, even among the faculty, but the elders are confident that anarchism is an inevitability, even if it takes 3,000 years to do so. This specifically increases the power of the syndicalists. Well, this increases the power of the syndicalists, specifically the World Society. I need radio. Improving reinforced rate is really important to ensure that I can bring all the troops to bear that I may or may not end up needing in these fights. Fortified main gun zone. The harvest in 1936. This was actually an event that was carried over from the older LKMT. Before the National Revolution began, the soldiers living in the Jiangxi Fujian insurgent zone would assist local peasants in the autumn rice harvests. Besides serving a practical function, reducing the burden of insurgency in KMT-controlled areas, this also served an ideological function, stressing the common ties between the party and the peasants. Now, however, with the NRA being mobilized to fight a conventional struggle, there are less hands than usual to help with the agriculture in the heart of the revolution. I could choose to lose 100,000 manpower. So about half my manpower. Lose the army experience, but I'm not going to be using that. in order to get base war support, or lose stability in order to gain more command power. I think I want more war support. Yeah, this is going to be rough, but it's necessary. Okay, we'll start working towards new infantry equipment. And we keep advancing. I cannot afford to stand still for too long. Take every advantage I can of circumstances. Okay. Should be able to take advantage of that. Revolutionary times, revolutionary women. The Chinese women's role in the National Revolution has long been a source of discussion within KMT leadership, even from the earliest days of the party. Despite resistance from conservative elements, some women were enrolled in Whampoa's classes, even forming a Dare to Die unit during the Northern Expedition. Similarly, a Women's Institute of Political Training, formerly headed by Song Qingling, was formed to facilitate female participation in China's future democracy. In a dramatic fashion, the National Revolutionary Army has formally organized a new Red Detachment of Women, one of the first large-scale units of its kind, a brainchild of various military commanders and feminist figures. While it serves a heavily propagandized role, unlike similar projects, it is also expected to see actual combat. Less heralded, but also vital for the revolution, is the tireless work of countless other women serving various integral roles in both civilian and military in the revolutionary apparatus. Again, let's keep radicalism down, thank you very much. So I'm running out of manpower. I faced the same problem the first time I played. Okay, things are starting to get hairy. Uh-oh, they've lost. Okay, I've captured Nanjing. That should severely impact the... yeah. Okay, I just need to hold it. Oh, that was enough to annex them. Okay. Lucky timing. Lucky timing. And I mean lucky. I could not have timed that better myself. Okay, so... I think the MIC is probably the best option. That's a lot of benefits. And will give me experience in air and navy. And eventually army once I figure that bit out. I think I can cancel that. Oh, the NRA prevailed. Yeah. Right, KMT. Great. For many outside observers of the tumultuous Chinese political situation since the 1911 Xinhai Revolution, the KMT's pursuit of national unification were thoroughly quashed with the failure of the Northern Expedition. The KMT movement, which splintered into competing factions, seemed destined for failure. Following the collapse of the Zili Authority in the League of Eight Provinces following Black Monday, it would appear that the KMT has surpassed these odds and has re-emerged as a vibrant political force. Years of biding their time in Europe and the Mingan insurgent zone has borne fruit. as guerrilla soldiers and militia of the resurgent National Revolutionary Army have won victory after victory against their adversaries. That was hairy right near the end. With the conflict's conclusion in eastern China, the time has come to rebuild the provinces and heal from the scars of war. For observers within the Internationale, it would appear that their sponsorship of the KMT has finally yielded its reward, as calls have gone out to rally the KMT movement once more to unify and save China from her strife. A second chance for the National Revolution. This will modify the National Revolutionary Army spirit so that I finally can gain army experience and to slightly boost political power gain, but it's going to modify some stuff. And recovery of the League War. Yeah. Also, I lose all off-map factories. Yeah. Oh, an immediate core on Jingling, so the state of Nanjing. I can also start modifying units, as well as change what is occupying, which... Yeah, cavalry. How long have I been recording? An hour. Okay. I think I'll set up for the end of the session. Yeah, set up for the end of the session. That should still be up. Yeah, just leave it up. Alright, so we managed to complete phase 1 without having to go through the entire mission tree, which is, well, focus tree, which is good, because the end one increases radicalization, and that's not what I want. So now we're on phase 2. There's 4 branches technically, although it really acts more like 3. We've got the political-economic tree. The economic stuff is definitely here. It starts with the political stuff and moves on to here with politically. Foreign policy, which is peaceful and more military. And finally, the military tree. I haven't even finished researching the radio, so... Some interesting stuff occurred. The right KMT came into power in the Yunnan clique. The officer apartment? Yeah, the Republican victory. Republican victory in the Sichuan clique. Manchu restoration. The Go Minjuang. Probably the best the Mao can do. Social conservative, yeah. Looks like Mongolia went democratic. Possibly? I'm seeing all the trees here. I don't think that's normal, but... Yeah. Not everything has had time to occur yet. I believe... Japan... Yeah, okay, so Japan remained democratic. It went full-on electoral reform. Good for them. They're still imperialistic and gonna be an eventual enemy. Well, the American Civil War hasn't happened yet, has it? Nope, America's still around. Look at that pie chart. It's gonna be chaos at some point. Italy went radical socialist, Communist of France went syndicalist, and... Oh yeah! Hello, totalists. Germany seemed to have maintained... Yeah. Followed. I'll get to that stuff eventually, though. Ukraine is falling apart. Poland went... Wait, no, the Polish haven't had the elections yet. Right, Ruthenia had their national revolution with a counter coup. Austria went Social Democrat. Lithuania went Social Conservative, unless they haven't done the elections yet. Don't know that. Oh boy, Kornilov dictatorship. That just means that they haven't fully finished their initial story. Persia still hasn't done its thing. Arabian Civil War, yeah. Again, there's not enough time for everything to have happened, but we've gone through the initial steps. For example, Manchu Restoration and the Gominjuang, which immediately went ahead and did this. I hope you survive as long as possible, because you're actually a potential ally. Right. I'm gonna have to build up army experience. That's going to be important. The question is which direction to take. But that's a question that can be answered later. The balance of power will become active at some point soon enough. And that's when things will start to get interesting. But that's it for now. I have definitely gone on long enough. I'm used to saving taking a lot longer. Okay, I will see you again next time. Until then, bye.